Previously on the campaign, the cast of the night tracked Gerblin raiders to an old hunting tower, captured 2 sentries, and learned the place is crawling with bugbears, trolls, and the mysterious Chief Perrick. Session 13 ended with the party outside the tower, prisoners in tow, and a highly suspicious cave nearby.
Which, perfectly sets the stage for what is probably the most chaotic hour of tabletop gaming we have seen yet.
Welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to break down the sheer chaos, the tactical brilliance, and honestly, the laugh-out-loud comedy of Session 14.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I really have to ask, how is it that the best tactical military maneuver in a high-stakes siege was devised by a goblin priest who is just terrified of getting his bum poked?
It is a phenomenal question, and today we're really exploring a core theme of interactive storytelling. What happens when standard game mechanics fail you and players are just forced to rely on bizarre, improvised, and honestly terrifying logic to survive.
Yeah, this session perfectly showcases this party's unique dynamic. I mean, they are a disaster.
A total mess.
Right. They are wildly incompetent at times, but they are an incredibly effective disaster. They manage to spin terrible dice rolls and strange environmental details into just pure gold.
Yeah, we really see the collision between rigid rule systems and pure player chaos here.
Yeah.
They aren't just fighting monsters, they are fighting the environment, the physics of the world, and their own dwindling resources.
So true. Well, let's jump right into the thick of it. So we start outside the tower. The party is standing at the base of a 15-foot ladder leading up to the main door.
Right.
They have their 2 captured Gerblin sentries tied to a tree. And in classic form, Mirth and the elf finally wanders onto the scene, visibly shaking off a bender from Mr. Scarlin's tavern.
Yeah, he slept through the entire stealthy approach.
Yeah.
Which, of course, forces the rest of the party to pause and recalibrate.
Exactly. So Bear the Wizard is all business. He wants to go straight up that ladder and breach the door immediately. But Chubbs, our deeply enthusiastic goblin priest, halts the entire operation.
Thank goodness he does.
Right. He points to the pitch-black cave yawning right behind them, and he drops his signature practical wisdom. He states they cannot climb the ladder because if they do, whatever is in that cave will sneak out and, quote, poke their bums.
It's so funny, but behind that childish phrasing is a literal masterclass in tactical awareness. I mean, if you analyze the geography of the scene, leaving an unchecked pitch-black cave at your rear while conducting a vertical assault is what tacticians call a fatal funnel.
A fatal funnel. I love that.
Yeah, because you are completely exposed on a ladder with zero cover. If enemies emerge from that cave, it's a guaranteed total party wipe. The players would have no way to defend themselves.
Wow.
So Chubbs, using his highly technical terminology, recognized the environmental threat and saved the entire group.
They realize he's right, too. So they pivot and decide they have to clear the cave before they can touch that ladder. Barrow casts a light spell on a rock, and Redbeard the dwarf pitches it into the darkness.
The visual here is just great.
I have to say, what that flickering light reveals is straight out of a horror movie.
Yeah, the game master is using environmental storytelling beautifully here. It is not just a standard room with a monster waiting in it.
Not at all. The cave is full of junk, but scattered everywhere are broken statues. And they aren't normal statues. They are statues of gerblins and humans, all frozen with expressions of sheer visceral terror.
Creepy.
Super creepy. And then the light catches the source of the problem. Chained to the far wall is a massive thrashing stone lizard wearing a thick hood.
Which is a brilliant callback for anyone paying close attention.
Oh.
Because a few sessions ago, Captain Barak casually mentioned a dangerous stone lizard in the woods that the party should, just ignore.
Just ignore it. And here it is, an absolute weapon of mass destruction, injured, chained up, and hooded so it doesn't accidentally turn everything it looks at into a lawn ornament.
Right.
But the tension is instantly undercut by comedy because there's a bugbear tending to this creature, a massive handler with a horrific scar wrapping entirely around his neck.
The juxtaposition here is what makes this show so entertaining.
Yeah.
You have this terrifying setup, and then just the mundane reaction of the enemy.
Totally. So the glowing rock clatters onto the cave floor. The bugbear handler spins around, looks at this magically illuminated stone sitting in the dirt, and with pure, unbothered practicality simply says, "This looks useful."
Oh, man.
And he walks over, picks it up, and sets it on a high shelf.
And by doing so, he inadvertently illuminates the entire cavern. He essentially rigs up the stage lighting for his own ambush, giving the party perfect visibility to strike.
It is cinematic perfection. So the party opens fire, Redbeard hits him with a crossbow bolt, Sir Ruperick lands a strike, Barrow and Chubbs throw daggers. It is a completely synchronized execution.
Yeah, they melt him.
But as the mortally wounded bugbear falls to his knees, he looks up to the ceiling and screams his dying words, "Daisy, avenge me!" And then he dies.
Which is just incredible.
Okay, I have to push back on this entirely, though.
Yeah.
Who is Daisy? They just executed this guy, and suddenly he gets a Shakespearean tragedy on his way out. Are we supposed to feel bad?
Well, this is a classic game master technique to subvert the mindless monster trope. When you give a random, low-level enemy a deeply personal final thought, you introduce a sliver of psychological doubt into the player's minds.
Well, it worked. Because I will be looking over my shoulder for Daisy for the rest of my life. I mean, is Daisy a dire wolf? Is Daisy a sentient battle axe? What is going on?
We have absolutely no idea, and that is the genius of it. The players now carry that paranoia forward, but they really don't have time to dwell, because with the handler dead, the stone lizard goes berserk.
Oh, right.
It thrashes violently against its chains, pulling chunks of rock from the ceiling. And during its death throes, its scales brush against the bugbear's fresh corpse.
And the bugbear instantly turns to solid stone. It is a brutal visual demonstration of the game mechanics.
Yeah, no saving throws there.
Exactly. Sir Rupert finally puts the beast down with a well-placed arrow. It stops moving. But this creates a fascinating new problem for the players. How do you confirm that a magical, petrifying lizard is actually dead without touching it and instantly dying yourself?
This brings us to a really interesting aspect of tabletop game logic. You might wonder, why don't they just use magic to sense if it's dead?
Right.
But in this system, magic is a finite resource. Spells cost energy. The players are operating under a brutal game economy where they have to conserve their abilities for the actual tower breach, so they have to rely on empirical testing.
The empirical method of fantasy survival. So, Barrows starts off reasonably enough. He chucks a stick at the corpse. The stick bounces off the scales and does not turn to stone.
Which is a valid control test for inanimate objects. But biological matter is a completely different trigger in these rule sets. A stick doesn't prove it's safe for a person to touch.
Exactly. So what do? They need biological test subjects. So they drag their two terrified, living gerblin hostages into the cave and literally shove them against the dead lizard's body.
It is the equivalent of miners bringing a canary into a coal mine to test the toxic air. Except here, the canary is a hostile hostage, and the toxic gas is a magical lizard.
It's so dark.
It is a wildly unethical solution. But it perfectly illustrates how players prioritize resource management over conventional morality when their own survival is on the line.
Yeah, so the hostages scream, they press against the scales, and they don't turn to stone. Concept proven. The lizard is dead.
Safe to proceed.
And surprisingly, surviving being used as human guinea pigs makes these prisoners extremely cooperative. The party starts interrogating them, and the intelligence they gather is fantastic. Can you break down what they actually learned here?
Sure, so the Gerblins outline a massive logistical failure on their end. The stone lizard was originally intended to be a siege weapon against Sir Garen's keep. But proximity was their downfall. Every time they tried to move the beast, it ended up accidentally petrifying their own Gerblin troops.
Because there was only one person immune to it, a legendary hero named Garl the Undying, who supposedly fought off a horde of humans while holding his own severed head in his hands.
It is a wonderful piece of on-the-fly world building. It gives the enemy forces a real sense of culture and mythology.
A mythology that Murthan immediately destroys.
Oh, completely.
He just gestures to the statues in the rubble and says, well, Garl the Undying is standing right over there. He is now Garl the Turned to Stone. The prisoners are genuinely devastated.
You can feel the deflation of an entire cultural legend in a single moment. It's tragic, but hilarious. And while the prisoners mourn, Barrow and Murthan carefully decapitate the lizard to take the head as a trophy for Captain Barak, avoiding the impossible task of dragging a petrifying carcass through the forest.
Smart move. And they get some crucial intel about the tower interior, too. Inside, there is a massive power struggle. Chief Perrick, the bugbear, holds the key to the treasure room on a chain around his neck. But Chief Hellersh, a hobgoblin, is actively plotting a mutiny.
Yeah, and we also get a breadcrumb hinting at a larger network. The prisoners mention that brown cloaks, those mysterious druidic figures seen earlier in the campaign, are visiting Chief Perrick.
Oh, right, the brown cloaks.
This confirms the Gerblin raid isn't an isolated incident. There is a coordinated effort happening behind the scenes.
They also all universally agree that the jailer inside the tower is a terrible person. Just a fun little consensus. But with all this intelligence gathered, The party faces a cold reality. They cannot leave hostile witnesses tied to a tree while they infiltrate a stronghold.
It's the stark calculus of the genre. They make the strategic choice to execute the prisoners to secure their rear.
But the game master gives us one of the greatest final lines ever. Right before the execution, one of the gerblins just looks up with profound philosophical acceptance and says, "Curse your sudden yet inevitable betrayal."
An incredible homage to the show Firefly. It is a perfect example of meta-humor bleeding into the narrative. It caps off the cave sequence beautifully, really relieving the tension before the real breach begins.
Which brings us to the tower assault. As they head back to the ladder, Redbeard warmly hands his mace over to Chubbs. And Chubbs is just beaming with vindication. He happily remarks that he's glad no one will poke their bums now.
Oh,
It is such a genuine, affectionate character moment right before they walk into absolute danger.
it really is.
Yeah.
And their approach changes entirely because of the intelligence they gathered. Redbeard and Murthan press their ears to the thick wooden door of the tower and hear frantic whispering. They instantly realize they've lost the element of surprise on the ground floor.
Right, so they use a grappling hook. They scale the outside of the stone structure up to the roof. They crest the top and find a dead gerblin next to an open trapdoor. Peering down through the opening, they see the ground floor of the tower where two live gerblins are having a tense, hushed argument.
Tactically, this is the high ground. Unaware targets, perfect positioning.
Exactly. So they ready their weapons, they fire a synchronized volley down through the trapdoor, and they miss completely.
A total whiff.
The arrows just clatter harmlessly off the stone walls. It is a spectacular failure of the dice.
This is where the physical reality of the game mechanics forces improvisation. The dice dictate failure, so the players have to scramble to recover using whatever's in their inventory.
Yeah, so Chubb still has the magically glowing rock that Barrow cast light on earlier. In a panic, he just drops it straight down the trapdoor. It plummets toward the ground. One of the gerblins hears the clatter, looks straight up into the glowing light, and sees the entire party staring down at him from the roof.
But the timing of the game master is what elevates this from a mistake to an amazing cinematic beat.
Exactly. Right as the gerblin makes eye contact, the duration of the light spell reaches its absolute limit and expires.
Oof.
The rock plunges into pitch-black darkness, literally inches from the gerblin's face.
The sudden sensory deprivation forces Barrow to frantically cast a new light spell just so they can see their targets to finish the fight. It is chaotic, messy combat.
They eventually drop into the tower and finish the enemies off. But the contrast between the comedy of that fight and the reality of the tower's interior is jarring. It is vile inside. Rotting, broken furniture everywhere. Grubby handprints on the walls. The stone is literally smeared with feces.
Yeah, if you look closely at the environmental storytelling here, it aligns perfectly with the intelligence they gathered. This is not a disciplined military outpost. It is a fractured, decaying stronghold held together by warring factions.
That makes sense.
The filth reflects the mutiny and chaos inside the ranks.
And amidst all that filth, they find the secret door exactly where the executed prisoner said it would be. They pry it open, revealing a tunnel system. But the walls of these tunnels are coated in a slick, oily black liquid. Yeah, it is claustrophobic and dark, and almost immediately it forces the party to make a critical navigational choice based purely on audio cues.
Sound design is a heavily utilized tool for game masters to guide players without railroading them. The party hits a fork in the road. To the north, they hear harsh, guttural voices echoing down the stone.
That's clearly the bulk of the gerblin forces, likely Peric or Hellarsh planning their next move.
Right, but to the south, the audio profile is entirely different. Low, rhythmic moaning and groaning.
Yeah, so Murthan decides to scout the south tunnel using his elf vision in the dark. He creeps down the oily passage, and suddenly the floor drops off sharply into a massive pit. He cannot see the bottom, so he wisely retreats and calls the rest of the party forward to bring the newly lit rock.
This is the moment the entire session builds toward. They stand at the edge of this drop-off and hold the light out over the void.
The glow reaches the bottom, and the reveal is a nightmare. Writhing in the pit is a mass of 22 zombies and undead creatures piled on top of about 36 rotting corpses. They are reaching up toward the light, but the walls are too sheer. They are trapped.
But beneath that writhing mass, the light catches the real objective.
Treasure, flashes of coins, scattered jewels, and jutting out from the pile is a tantalizing 3-foot copper-tipped wand.
The game master is explicitly laying out a risk-reward scenario. You might be wondering why they don't just walk away and head north.
I would.
But if you've ever played these games, you know the psychological pull of a glowing magical item in a pile of treasure is practically impossible for players to ignore.
Oh, they are not walking away from a magic wand. So Chubbs steps up to the edge of the pit. Our chaotic, bum-poking goblin priest calls upon his divine authority and casts Turn Undead.
Now, for those unfamiliar with the mechanic, Turn Undead is an ability where a holy character literally channels divine energy to mathematically force undead creatures to flee in terror. It is designed to be an overwhelming, guaranteed mathematical win against lower-level monsters.
And it is a magnificent success. The holy energy cascades down into the pit. 21 of the undead creatures shriek, recoil, and violently scramble over each other to press themselves against the far, dark edges of the pit, completely terrified by the light. The treasure is suddenly exposed.
Except for one.
Except for one. Out of that entire horde, one single desiccated corpse stands its ground. It is completely unimpressed by the divine authority. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't run. It just stands perfectly still in the center of the pit, guarding the loot.
This is a brilliant subversion of the mechanics by the Game Master. When a mathematical guarantee fails, it strips the players of their confidence and replaces it with sheer terror.
It is exactly like a retail worker who has just survived a massive holiday rush. The manager is screaming, the store is on fire, and this one worker is just standing at the register like, I no longer fear any manager and I am not moving.
That is spot on.
Yeah.
Functionally, it is like a computer program crashing on a single line of code that simply refuses to be deleted. The system says it should work, but reality is staring back saying otherwise.
And that is exactly where the session ends. The party is frozen at the edge of the drop-off. The northern tunnels are echoing with gerblin voices at their backs, and below them is this massive pile of treasure, guarded by one seriously resolute zombie.
It is a fantastic cliffhanger that encapsulates everything we've talked about today.
It really does. I mean, we went from the hilarious tragedy of the bugbear screaming for Daisy to the paranoia of bum poking to using prisoners as tactical test dummies, all the way to this chilling standoff at the edge of a zombie pit.
For you listening, this highlights the unique joy of interactive storytelling. The rules are strict, but the chaos of the players inside those rules creates moments you could never script.
Absolutely. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on.
Yeah. Consider the psychology of that final image in the pit. That single, stubborn, undead creature. It did not resist Chubbs' divine magic because it had immense physical strength or because it was a massive boss monster. It resisted through sheer unnatural resolution. So ask yourself, what does it actually mean when a mindless, rotting corpse decides to look absolute divine authority straight in the eye and simply say no?
Gives you chills, doesn't it? Well, that's all for this deep dive. Thanks for hanging out with us, and keep your glowing rocks handy.